So, as promised earlier in the show, we've got two amazing individuals on for our interview today. We've got Jeremy Kingwill and Lance Levesque, both really good friends of mine, doing a lot of awesome work in New York City. They're actually preparing for a shoot today. So they're going to tell us a little bit about what that shoot entails, what they do to prepare for it, and so give you a little bit of knowledge there. And then they're a riot, so I'm sure this is going to be a funny one as well. So here we are.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. It's so good to talk to you again, man.
Yeah, it is. It's been too long. So how's everything out that way?
It's going. It's doing pretty well. I'm doing a lot of video work and hanging out with this mook and doing some production. It's funny because I usually only hear about you when we're working on the project, and now we get to talk to you about the project a little bit and talk about what we do. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for making the time to be on the show today. I know everybody in Freelance Filmmaker Nation here is going to want to hear a lot about what it is that you do and what's made you successful up until this point. We're trying to that secret sauce, if you will.
So, I mean, I guess a lot of it has to do with what the project entails, really. It kind of decides everything that you do. Decides on the gear, decides on the length of the shoot, really kind of everything's going to be different. So it kind of pays to be able to have a different sort of style for anything that comes your way if you're doing freelance stuff, obviously. So that kind of incorporates quite a bit in the gear that you use, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who are not familiar with the project, the aforementioned project, Jeremy or Lance, do you want to tell our Freelance Filmmaker Nation here what it is that what this project actually is, so they can kind of get up to speed, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently creating a piece for the Gay Hero Project, which you're the editor. The piece itself is Will Darkangelo and the Tribe, and it's about a gentleman who lives in Fitchburg, Mass, which for many years has a really kind of a bad reputation about the town. And this is a piece that shows the idea that there is community in Fitchburg. And he's created this community of a music group of a bunch of high school kids, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
And today, we're, we had wrapped shooting a while ago. As you know, you're the editor of the piece. And interestingly, you've requested a couple shots for the cut. So that's what we're actually doing today. We've been getting all of our gear together. When we wrap up this podcast, we're actually jumping in my truck and we're off to go get a couple last minute shots that we didn't think that we would need. So there within lies that issue too of this, when you're shooting, just when you think you're done, it's never really done. It's never really done. So Will and his husband Jamie have been kind enough to let us in today to do a couple pickup shots for you to make life easier in the editing room, and then we're officially done the project. So we've been putzing around here, getting our equipment together and what it is that's needed for a very simple independent filmmaking shoot. And we could go over some of the stuff with you if you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure everybody watching would love to kind of hear what it is that goes into your filmmaker bag when you're getting ready to roll out onto a shoot.
That's always that's the first thing that comes. Hey, what do you shoot on?
Exactly.
It's so funny. I love this question. It's always so fun to hear what other people are shooting on and to kind of get ideas for what you might shoot on in the future. You know what I mean?
And also the idea that this is not a there you go. He's already opening up equipment. This is not a multi-million-dollar. We're an independent filmmakers. So the reality is that we've learned to survive on sometimes what is good equipment, but not necessarily the most expensive in the world. But when one masters their equipment, to me, obviously, for me, I think story is even more important than that.
Yeah,
through the years, I've shot on all kinds of different equipment, and I started in film and in original, video, and for many years it was video on tape. And
I remember those days.
Yeah, and if the story's there, that's audiences, beautiful cinematography is great. But if there's no story, you're just looking at beautiful cinematography, which I can look at on any role. And where we're not a, multi-billion-dollar Hollywood, studio, we do the best that we can, make the best camera movements as smooth as we can, pay attention to our composition, and let the story unfold. I'm a huge fan of this idea of cinema verite and this idea of documentary filmmaking in which the documentarian is more of an observer. You're allowing the subjects to reveal the story for themselves in unscripted filmmaking. So for me, I think that that's really important. With that being said, we all, as filmmakers, want people to be engaged in what it is, the story that we're telling. And in order to engage them, we're going to use editing tricks that you use, and we're going to use a decent cinematography. Like, thoughts to composition, thoughts to camera placement, thoughts to how we're capturing it. Do we get close? Do we get closer? And I think that it is really important that, although it's not the end all, it really is nice to have beautiful cinematography.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the importance of the visual imagery, soaking in the audience through the beautiful visuals. I think that is very important as well. And I'm, very fortunate to work with a talented crew of cinematographers. It's pretty incredible. And having Jeremy here right now, we've got all of our equipment out, we've got our checklist going, making sure that we have kind of some of the essentials that we need.
Yeah, and actually, I wasn't expecting to go this direction, but you mentioned working with a talented group. I think so often when folks get into this industry, it becomes savage. There's competition. People don't work with one another. They hoard secrets. They hoard skills, and as a result, it's very very primal, I would say, this industry. So your approach is obviously very different. Why do you utilize the approach that you do versus kind of like that dragon in a cave, hiding all of the awesome loot and skills that you have versus collaborating, networking, and doing what it is you do? Why do you go that route?
Well, for me, simple question is, I'm an educator, I'm going on my, I think, 16th, 17th year at Keene State College teaching film production. So for me, it's part of the job is to share what I learn, and what I've learned in my own personal experiences as a filmmaker. That's something that I don't want to hide onto that stuff. I want to share that with my students so that they too can be great filmmakers.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of it is just enjoyment and getting a lot of pleasure out of just learning from other people and kind of growing that way. But also, I think one of the things that I always kind of keep in my back pocket, I think, to quote Jack White, I try to trick people into teaching me their tricks. So I always want to learn more so I can better myself and make myself a better filmmaker. So I try to surround myself with like-minded people who are also just trying to make some really cool stuff, and we all kind of learn from it, and we do better on our own, and we do even better when we're together. So it just kind of makes sense, honestly.
And what's interesting is that's counterintuitive, because this is an industry in which we need each other to survive. My projects would not get done if it weren't for the team, which includes you as an editor. It takes a lot of people to make a film, and I wouldn't want to be so insular to be making my movies alone. That's part of the greatness is that you're pulling all this talent to the table. Filmmaking is that interdisciplinary art. You're not just, it's all over the place in terms of what's needed to tell a story and make a film happen. So it seems odd, but in that competitive world, right? Yes. But in the smaller world of independent filmmaking, I don't necessarily think I see that. Because I see struggling artists who are always sharing. You know, it's whenever you get a new piece of equipment, you're calling me. Whenever Jeremy gets a new piece of equipment, he's calling me, or I'm getting Snapchatted, or I'm getting a photo. You know, it's like we're all proud of what we're doing, and you know, and sharing our knowledge. That's one of the greatest parts of being an artist.
I liken it to the skateboarding culture almost, because if you look at the skateboarding culture, you could be like your first day on a board, or you could be there 40 years old, never been off your skateboard, and it's all love the whole time. It's very, very similar to filmmaking, I find, when, you know, it's the people that I make films with, at least.
Well, it's a click, isn't it, really? Well, not a click, but it's a niche art, right? But now with you know, 4K cell phones, and everybody's a videographer now, so it's opened up a huge world
itself because of all of that. So.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's perfect because you know, what we're trying to do here at Freelance Filmmaker is exactly that. We want to build that sense of community. We want to start breaking down those competitive barriers. I'm not here to say, you know, competition is a problem, but what I'd like to see and what we'd like to kind of generate here is, you know, while we're competitive with one another, we're also willing to take the time to stop and help one another too. Because I think in order to be a filmmaker, there is some aspect of you that's going to be very competitive. And so fighting, And do I still have you? Oh, sorry, I got some feedback here. But I think in order to be a filmmaker, there has to be a side of you that's very competitive. And it's very counterintuitive to fight that competitive nature and slow down and make sure that you're helping out the folks around you. And it's very easy to give way to that competitive side that says, well, I want to be the best regardless of who I have to step on or anything else. So, you know, you've embodied that spirit. And I think this group has embodied that spirit, and that's absolutely something that we're trying to perpetuate here. So I think it's really cool hearing how it's affected you and your filmmaking and everything else. And I think it's really inspiring too. Just seeing others grow from your knowledge and you growing from their knowledge, and everybody just kind of pooling that skill to get better. So it's something awesome. I really do admire that.
You know, there is that road of competitive nature and cutthroat and Hollywood, and you know, that does exist, and that might be someone's path. You know, had that been the path, I would have stuck with my, you know, business management degree, you know, and pushed towards this idea of, you know, stepping over people and making great money. I mean, that, not to say that that's, you know, not a route that maybe some people take. For me, I you know, unfortunately, well, I don't know. This is slightly different. I'm kind of lost for words for a second here.
Well, it's okay. We can fix it in post.
We have to make a living, right? But at what point let me throw an example at you. If I'm making a film on someone and I show them the cut, and they say to me, I cannot, oh my God, I can't believe I'm being portrayed in this manner, or the way I look, or I'm really uncomfortable with this particular shot because for whatever reason, it's a bad angle and it's unflattering, let's say, right? At that point, you know, this is where you can be ruthless and cutthroat and say, that's the film, that's it. Boom. Or you can go out of your way and really try to, you know, appease them, think about it, reshoot it, take the shot out, you know, go out of your way to be kind to others. I think it's important, and I can't imagine if you were to like burn all those bridges every time, who would want to be in your films if people didn't think they could trust you?
Right, absolutely. And and we've actually even seen some of that.
You can think of what, Jeremy?
I said, I think that can translate to your crew as well, though. Is like if you're on set with a crew and you put together, you know, you've got your editor, you've got the producers, you've got your director, this, that, and the other, and you don't really make those kind of gives and takes as often as you'd like to. and it goes in a negative way, then nobody's going to want to work with you. And then you're back to square one doing it by yourself. So
yeah, and me and with GHP and the project, this is a massive team of people. Can you imagine if I was a ruthless, cutthroat director? You know, maybe if I was paying everyone $20,000 for the day, but you know what, I'm paying them and a couple drinks and some food. You know, you have to be kind. No one would want to work with you again. And I think that comes also with age and being comfortable on a set, and just understanding to just chillax. Well, for me, it's also a documentary, so it's unscripted, so it's a lot of just chillax, get into the mode, get into the people that you're working with, just relax and let the art flow. And that's a part of personality as well. It's a part of having fun, lots of laughter, you know, having things planned and in advance so that when you're on set, that's also, you know, massive, as you know, for me, is this idea of pre-production. That you know when you're in production, you know things that you're going to need specifically, like in technology-wise, but also how you're going about it. You know, what exactly is your mission, and to make that very clear with all of the crew so that everyone knows where you're coming from and everyone knows their job and what needs to be done.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so I know we got a little sidetracked, but tell us a little bit then, you know, so you're talking about going into production and working on set and, you know, pre-production. Tell us now a little bit about what you got packed for your day of filming.
So today, I don't necessarily have everything that my arsenal necessarily has, but like I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, kind of really depends on what you're shooting. So I kind of just packed for today's shoot. Today's shoot is just going to be an interior kind of documentary stuff on people, you know, day in the life of almost. So really doesn't require all that much. So today I've just brought, actually I kind of overpacked, which is a good problem to have, but I've got a GH5 with Panasonic, for my A camera on a shoulder rig, with a 5-inch monitor and a matte box. What else I got in there? Using a V-mount battery to power the monitor and the camera.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I'm sorry?
I was just admiring, those V-mounts are nice. Those V-mounts are really nice.
They last forever. Highly recommend getting into either a V-mount or a gold mount battery system if you're still running off of your batteries that come with a camera. They're going to last you probably about an hour and a half, depending on the battery and depending on what kind of video you're running. But when you a bunch of these big suckers, easily get a full day shoot out of one battery charge pretty easily. But yeah, so for glass on that guy, I've got a Vedra 12 millimeter, and that's a T-stop, so that's a T 2.2.
Okay.
Big fan of that glass. That brand is coming out with, or has come out with, some really, really nice primes. And specifically for the Micro Four Thirds mount, they kind of started making for that mount specifically and then branched out from there. So working with a Micro Four Thirds mount camera is pretty ideal for that glass, which I'm pretty excited about. But T-stop versus f-stop is also kind of nice.
So for those of us who are less technically inclined, do you mind explaining a little bit about versus the T-stop versus the f-stop, how they kind of compare?
Yeah, so I mean, the general rule of thumb, kind of overall explanation behind it is an f-stop is not necessarily going to be giving you the exact amount of light that it's saying, give or take. So if you're shooting at a f2.8, since that's the way that they calibrate the blades inside of there is a little bit, I mean, not loosey-goosey, but a little bit less precise, you could be shooting somewhere closer to an f3 or an f3.5 or even lower technically. But when you're working with T-stop lenses, that's going to be very specific and you're guaranteed the amount of light that it's telling you that you're at. So if I dial down to an a T4, I'm guaranteed T4 amount of light. So it's a little bit more widely used in cinema because of that reason. F-stops are really, really utilized in photography because you kind of have that availability for that push and pull a little bit. If your exposure isn't exact when you're trying to do it right there, you're working on frame rather than 24 every second, you know? So, but in this case, I just needed a really nice wide. On that micro four thirds mount, that 12 millimeter is going to be more of a 24 millimeter in comparison.
Yeah, because you're getting the cropped sensor there.
Right. The thing to remember about that is, though, my bokeh is going to be more of a. So it's a T2.2. My bokeh is going to be a little bit closer to that of the bokeh of an F4. But the light amount is going to be the same as 2.2. So light is always going to be the same, but your bokeh is going to change when you have that crop factor.
Gotcha. It's very interesting, and there's so much that goes into a lens. I mean, between the breathing and everything else, all these little things that you wouldn't think of, it gets really involved, very involved. And for those of you watching too, don't be alarmed if some of this is going a little bit over your head. That's fine. We will cover it in a later episode, I promise. That's what we're here for. So if you are feeling a little lost, I highly encourage you to Google it, of course. But we will cover it in a later episode, so
or
stay
you can
tuned.
just call me at home. My phone number is 559.
What is it? 867-5309? They'll get you directly to Jeremy Keem. Yeah, everybody calls it. That's why. I mean, it's popular.
12FU.
So yeah, that's going to be the main rig today. That's on the shoulder rig and on the tripod. So we'll probably be switching back and forth between shoulder rig and being on sticks. So outside of that, I've got a backup camera, which is a GH4. So GH4, GH5, they obviously play pretty well together. But the GH5 I have pretty decked out internally as well. So got the GH4 as the backup. I also have the Voigtlander 42.5 millimeter lens, which is a German company. They make the f-stop on that is a f.95.
Oh, it is.
That's gonna be gorgeous.
Beautiful lens.
So it's just really amazing in low light situations. Like today, we're probably going to be shooting in a basement, and I've got a light wand right next to me that we're going to use for lighting. But I mean, even so, we might need to open that guy up pretty big. So having that 0.95 f-stop on there is pretty nice. On that, again, going back to that bokeh versus f-stop and all that stuff, my bokeh is going to be more along the lines of probably like an f2 maybe, somewhere around there. But I'm going to have 0.95 availability of light. So it's pretty amazing for low light situations, especially with that sensor on there.
And those light ones, they're really, really amazing. I mean, the idea of having to travel with the light kits like I'm so used to, or lamps and with diffusion paper, and now it's a wand that looks like a lightsaber, for God's sake, and you literally just bring it with you. Really easy setup, put it on a tripod, you can direct the light. It's great for portraiting, which of course, as we're making documentaries, we want them to be, kind of like portrait cinematography in nature, if you will.
Yeah.
And that'll come in handy. We'll be working the two shots, as you know, because you've requested them. We talked to a newspaper article in which they are spoken about. So we have that. They've gotten the newspaper. So we're going to go to his work area and his stained glass workshop, which is down in his basement. To kind of like match the footage, because that's where it comes from. So we're going to do like maybe an over-the-shoulder shot of him opening the paper. So that light might be a little bit I'm not sure what the lighting's going to be like down there, but it'll be nice to have a couple light wands to be able to, where we're just concentrating on the newspaper, we don't need any more lighting than that. So we didn't, we're not packing all that lighting up. And then the second shot that you needed was, I think we shot it in 24 frames a second, and you had envisioned this idea about, some stuff happening in the kitchen and the making of the food happening in slow-mo. So,
so in that case, that's actually one of my favorite things about these two cameras is they can shoot natively in slow-mo, but more specifically, the GH5 can do upwards of 180 frames per second if you're shooting in 1080. Unfortunately, if you want to shoot in 4K, you can only, I think, do up to 60 frames per second. However, that slows down very easily in post-production and looks very nice if you're using something like Twixtor or even what's built into your editing program.
So since we got two of you, we close out each show with a group of 3 questions.
Bye.
So first question was, what would you recommend to a filmmaker or photographer just getting into the business? What would you recommend to them in terms of what helped you succeed? Advice.
Become a lawyer.
Am I successful?
You'll make more money.
Am I successful? Man. I would really just say,
keep at it.
Yeah. Personally, being I kind of redo that every day because I'm always looking for new clients and stuff like that. So I would just say, don't, as cliche as it is, don't be afraid to just go up to someone and be prepared to get a no, but just be like, hey, oh, and actually we were just talking about this the other day. I do free videos all the time. I really want to work with a company and I think they're really cool and I've followed them for quite some time, and I'm always thinking in my head I'd love to, do a video for them sometime. I'll just offer them a free video, you know what I'm saying? And hopefully that spawns out to something else. If not, then I can at least say I made a video for them. If they hate it and don't post it, then I won't be embarrassed. If they do post it and they like it, then, it's all extra icing on the cake,
So we know Jeremy's not coming from the ruthless standpoint of competitive nature.
He's also not rich. So
Starving artist.
No, but it's good. You get a lot of work out of that.
It's so little skin off any of our backs, and yet it can be so life-changing for someone. Why wouldn't you do the favor,
Yeah.
Here and there, not all the time. Otherwise we'd be in the poorhouse, but, every once in a while it's, I don't know. Good to give out to the universe.
Yeah.
Question number 2. All right. This is the dreaded question.
Oh God, we're gonna go radio silent on you.
No, I love it.
Knock knock.
All right. What are your 3 favorite films and why?
I'm sorry. What?
What are your 3 favorite films and why?
3. It depends on the amount of day.
Right now is the day, isn't it?
3 favorite films?
Currently, I can't stop watching.
Is it currently or all the time? So you can't do 3 favorites.
Who cares? You're a filmmaker. They get it. It's going to change tomorrow. We all get it. See, I love this question because filmmakers always argue over it and have to I can't answer that.
Well, can we do it in genre?
Oh my God, just answer the question. Just 3 random movies you love and you're irreverent about it. I can't stop watching Infinity War right now. The new Avengers movie. It's not. I mean, it's nowhere near my favorite movie, but I can't stop watching it.
That's soul punishing. That's
so
brutal.
Good.
It is. I'm still not recovered.
I agree with everything that director chose to do in that movie by killing everyone. But I thought it was so good. I thought it was a really fun movie. So right now I can't stop watching that.
It was a good one.
Trying to think of movies that I just always go back to watching no matter how many. Star Wars, every single Star Wars except for the prequels because those aren't real.
So you are a fan of the more recent ones then?
Oh, I love them. I love
all right.
Ryan Johnson went in. I love the direction JJ went in, and I'm excited for JJ to come back for the 3rd one for sure. But I thought Ryan did a great job. I have a really big issue with the original 3 because they just it's actually, there's way too many issues I have with that, so I won't jump into that. But I thought using practical everything you can is the only way to make a Star Wars. So I thought that was great.
Absolutely.
And then my third one I'd probably say is Blade Runner. Either of the two.
Ooh, all right, yeah, that's a go-to. That is absolutely a go-to. You know,
Just recently.
I hear that one a lot, and you know what? I'll be honest, I have not seen it.
Which one? Either?
Well, I've seen the new one. I haven't seen the old one.
You haven't seen the original. Interesting.
No. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. Because they actually used some of the footage from the original in that, like a couple little snippets. So I'd be really interested to see if your opinion changes about it after watching that one.
You know, I think I'll have to watch the new one again because it was a while ago that I saw it, and then I think right after I'll watch the original because at that point that's going to be the order of my watch anyhow. So I'll have to
Does
give
the
that a
new
shot.
one? I haven't seen the new one.
Oh, it's
Does
wonderful.
it capture the feeling that's captured in that
Very much so, I thought.
first one?
I thought.
Oh,
See, I thought some of the scenes were a little bit too brightly lit, but I think that's more of an
futuristic
issue.
concept.
Well, no, I think it was more along the lines of equipment back then just was different, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard to recreate that unless you're shooting it on film again and you're using the
Right.
lights again. And
Yeah.
so, what about you, Lance?
Well, you know, it is such a hard question because it's not. God, there's so many great films. So I think I'll answer the question rather than saying 3 favorite films because for me there is no such thing. It would depend on genre. It would depend on my mood.
Oh my
it would
God,
depend
you
on the
say
time
Paul
of
Blart
day.
Mall Cop because we know you love Paul Blart Mall Cop.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even actually know what you're talking about. Well, I would say that, you know, I mean, there's these quintessential films that change the world, like Citizen Kane. You know, I mean, but that's, you know, getting into academia kind of like answer, or, but the reality is it did change cinema. Oh
yeah, absolutely.
Another film that changed cinema, and of course is right up my alley, is Grey Gardens. And the idea of capturing those two and their falling down home around them, and the fascinating, and that world of cinema verite where the cameras are just running and you're capturing someone's life. I think I'm very nosy and voyeuristic in that way. Is one of my loves of documentary is the idea of peeking into someone's life and seeing someone else's world. I find that actually more fascinating, which is why I'm a huge fan of documentary as opposed to fictional film. Not to say that I don't like fictional film as well, but I think that I'm more engaged in learning about someone's life, someone's real story. I also do have guilty pleasures, right? Like everyone else. So my guilty pleasure is probably aliens ruining the world, like anything from Cloverfield to the film Aliens, or
I love Prometheus.
Any of these like end of the world scenarios where the aliens are going to take over. That's definitely a guilty pleasure for me.
Yeah. Have you seen A Quiet Place?
I have not.
Oh, not yet.
Oh.
You need to see it. You will absolutely be blown away with it. It is so good.
Looking forward. That's a guilty pleasure. And another guilty pleasure is the new genre of crime documentary.
Yeah.
Things Making a Murderer, The Staircase.
Those are great.
You know, the whodunits. Did they do it? Did they not do it? What's So those are like guilty pleasures. And Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, nice.
That's my other guilty pleasure. I love Sherlock Holmes as a character, and there's such a steep history of that in cinema, and all the old ones are all free on YouTube.
Really?
You know, like all the old Basil Rathbone, a lot of those, that's all free on YouTube now. And I just loved the idea of Sherlock Holmes and So that's another guilty pleasure.
I got to change two of my films because there's two films that I've been meaning to watch over again that I really think if you're an independent filmmaker and you haven't seen these films, I think you're going to really, really enjoy them. But one of them is The Fall with Lee Pace.
I love The Fall.
So good.
Just every single shot. You can pause it on any single frame, and it's just a
eye candy. The whole thing is eye candy.
Unreal. And the other one would be The Double with Jesse Eisenberg.
I started to watch that. I didn't complete it, so I'm going to have to go back now.
I love that. I just love the lighting, the camera movement, everything about it. Richard Ayoade directed it. He did such a great job with that. But those are really good, fun, independent filmmaker kind of movies, I thought. And Antichrist, if you really don't want to have a good day.
Lars von Trier, I can't.
Oh, everything he does. Yeah. He's amazing. He actually produced a movie years and years and years ago called Dear Wendy about a very, very, very small town and these four kids who are pacifists who end up shooting up the entire town. Wicked good movie, but he produced that one. It's so Lars von Trier. It's got a lot of really main actors in it who were really little at the time.
One of my favorite genres of all time, too, is cult film or underground film. So things like James Bidgood's Pink Narcissus, anything that John Waters has done, anything. These kind of like outrageous, but, shocking at their time kind of films are always a fun guilty pleasure as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And The Fall, that is, I think, probably the most beautifully filmed movie of. I think it's the most beautifully filmed movie I've ever personally seen.
It's funny because Tarsem, he did. What else did he do? He did that one.
He did The Cell.
Mafrio.
He did The Cell.
And then, other than that, I don't. No offense, but I don't know if I really like many of his other movies.
I thought Immortals was a little lacking. I mean, it was beautifully shot, but
that's what it was.
You know what I love about movies too? Just to digress a little bit, but the idea that some of them we're tied to these films, right? So we have examples of things from childhood, right? Like Sound of Music, The Wizard of Oz, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. These like
yes,
universal stories that all children love, but also the idea that there's memory with when we go and see something. Whenever I see the film Paris is Burning, I think of Cara Kilda because we went to go see it together. When you're talking about The Fall, I think of Kev Kelsey, Hollywood editor, because he made me watch that footage. He was like, no, literally, he's like, you have to watch at least 5 minutes of this film. So we sat down and watched it, and then he gave me a copy and said, you need to watch this film. So it's funny because when we talk about The Fall, the first thing I think of is Kev Kelsey. But all movies, they kind of have a memory or memories that are created with friends or a time period in your life. And that is very interesting.
Yeah. And it has the ability to transport you, too.
And also, a plug for you, but I am a fan of your latest film. And the access that you had in terms of like, for military access and telling a story. Why don't you talk quickly about your latest film?
Actually, for those of you in the audience, Gwyneth and I produced a film called 237th, The White Mountain Warriors. And it's a brief documentary on a military police unit from New Hampshire as they go through training, gearing up for a training event that is an Army-wide training exercise. So the training was very intense. We got to be really intimate with the soldiers, see what they were actually going through as they were sleep deprived and tired and wet and muddy, and really see them push themselves to a point where I think a lot of them realized that, they were capable of more than that they'd initially given themselves credit for, because they were driving themselves at rates and with so little sleep and while they were so tired, but they were driving so hard that you wouldn't know that these guys hadn't gotten more than 3 or 4 hours of sleep in the last 2 or 3 days. So it's
and you're capturing their character. There lies the power of the documentarian who gets to know their subject, right? So you weren't a stranger to these people because you know them, right? So that gives you a heads up as a documentarian because people soon forget that your camera's there with you. They're really just hanging with you. But you got that. And then the fact that you have this, like, military exercise, I've never seen anything like it. And it's so well done that I literally thought I was watching a documentary on Netflix. I really did. I can't wait till this comes out. This is one of my favorite new films. So there you go. That's one of my favorite films right now. Is yours.
Thank you.
Really, really good. It's something that I've never been privy to, and I think that a lot of audiences aren't going to be privy to. I mean, we see that a lot in narrative film, right? Right, like we're, Platoon, and we see all kinds of war movies, but to actually see a training exercise and what's going on, I'm left with the feeling of, wow, what soldiers do for us, well edited, well shot, great story, amazing characters. So looking forward to you releasing that to the world.
Thank you. Yeah, we're waiting right now on word from the New Hampshire Film Fest on if we made it in, because that's New Hampshire unit. So we'll release it in New Hampshire if we have the opportunity.
I have a good feeling about that.
Yeah. So then, last question: what resource, whether it be a podcast, a book, a movie, a documentary, what resource would you recommend to somebody that really helped you out in your growth in the film world?
Getting a job.
Literally.
Literally. No, but seriously though.
When it's in your hands and you're doing it.
No, but not even that. I worked at Adorama Rentals, which is Adorama is a camera store in New York City, for those of you who don't know. It's very, very, very likened to B&H.
Yep.
So I worked in their rentals department when I lived in New York for about 8 months or so. And I cannot tell you the wealth of knowledge that I learned from just working at a rental house. And then moving back to New Hampshire, the first job that I got back when I moved to New Hampshire was working at Hunt's Photo, which is a photo store, which is like third in line after B&H and Adorama, because Hunt's.
No kidding.
And they happened to have a shop in the town over next to me, so I just started selling cameras and stuff like that, and realized that I knew even less about all the different kinds of cameras and stuff like that. So I now know all sorts of stuff about cameras that I'll never use, but it's just a wealth of knowledge. Working in a rental house, probably more so, because you get to work with a lot bigger and nicer toys. I worked doing quality control, and then worked a little bit in building rigs for people who would come and rent them, so they could test them before they would rent them out. But we would rent to people like Saturday Night Live and The Daily Show.
Oh, that's so cool.
They don't own their own equipment for a lot of these segments. They just go and rent it. A lot cheaper. Like every single SNL digital short, they just rent the gear. So a lot of the times their cinematographer will come and set up the gear, and you set up the gear with them and go and grab gear when they need like an extra cable or whatever. But you learn what a LEMO cable is. You learn what, when you're going to use a XLR cable instead of, a regular 3/5 jack or whatever. So that's just a wealth of knowledge, just getting jobs that you might necessarily think you might be a little above. It's always humbling to kind of check yourself a little bit and be a little humble with yourself and go do the job that you think you might be above, and you end up learning quite a bit, and it's very, very good for you as a filmmaker, in my opinion. I highly recommend that.
And I would say, although it seems like a really simple answer, Google.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that we have the internet now, but I would have to say, so there's Jeremy's pulling out equipment, we're actually going to pack up because we're looking at our clock here as we have to shoot.
Yeah, we've got the battery signal going off here, so we're same timeline, I think.
All right. So, but I think one of the greatest resources for me actually is my friends, my filmmaking friends. That whenever I have a question, the best thing in the world to do is pick up the phone and call.
Shout out Ryan.
Yeah.
Shout out Ryan Chappelle. Shout out Kevin Sweet. Shout out Kevin Dynia. There's lots of people, lots of friends. For me, I find that an immense resource. I mean, how many times have I called you with questions, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Using each other,
or vice versa.
Yeah, and also the new podcast that you shared with me. Boy, that's a really great resource as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually that was the first shout out. So last week we interviewed Ryan, who you just gave a shout out to, and right after that we gave a recommendation for the Indie Film Hustle. So plug number 2, if Alex Ferrari is watching.
Oh, I've been really enjoying that. If and it's also nice to hear other people going through the same problems,
Yeah,
and trying to
absolutely.
figure out the wave of how to get our stories out to the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Jeremy and Lance, what's that?
So we're going to wrap this up, yeah?
Yeah, we've got everything. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I know Freelance Filmmaker Nation is really going to appreciate a lot of what you kind of shared, and the fact that you're going through a lot of the same things that everybody else is going through. So this struggle is not alone. You're not hustling alone. We're all doing it together. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, and we'll let you get off to your shoot. Thank you so much.